Okay, we'll start this one again. Welcome everybody to Council Meeting M10, 4th of October 2022. Apologise for the delay. We have a new system that we haven't tried before where it's a hybrid meeting, so we have a councillor who's, I'm not even sure where he is, but remote, at work somewhere a long way away, but still joining in. So terrific that it's possible. And, yep, thank you, Tony. Mr. Councillor Keeble. So moving right along, we'll move to item number 1, which is recording and live streaming of council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Jeremy.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Item 2 is acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people, and I'd invite everybody to stand. The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the Taungurung traditional owners and their ancestors as the traditional owners of the land we are now on. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Item 3 is confirmation of minutes from the Ordinary Council Meeting M9, 6th of September 2022. Moved by Councillor Hughes and seconded by Councillor Forsyth. Any comments or questions, corrections? No? All those in favour? It's carried. Apologies. There are none, as we have Councillor Keeble joining remotely. Obituaries and congratulations, and I will start from my right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one obituary from me. Last month, Joyce Larkin passed away. She is the quintessential stalwart of the Lower Kiewa Valley and will be sadly missed. I won't even attempt to name all the committees that Joyce was on in her time because I would absolutely miss one. She seemed to be a part of everything in the community up in the Gundowring area, and there are still many Larkins around, so condolences out to the family.
Thank you. Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last Thursday, I had the honour to attend the National Police Remembrance Day in Wodonga, representing Alpine Shire Council, and I just want to acknowledge all those police officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty over those last 12 months. On a more brighter note, I also attended the Myrtleford Bowls Club 75th anniversary luncheon the other Sunday. A great lot of people, a committee there that's very forward-looking, and I think they've already encountered council officers for funding opportunities going forward for some of that area there. And I think, as with some of the other councillors, it was nice to see so many people attend the online forum through the Dinner Plane community engagement for bushfire management, risk management. That was a worthwhile exercise going forward, and thank you to all those people who put their views forward on that.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. I'm going to come back to Councillor Keeble and flip through to Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We were lucky enough to have a citizenship ceremony this afternoon here in the council chambers. and we had 5 representatives here today that are our newest Australian citizens, so congratulations to them and their families. It's always lovely to be a part of that. Big congratulations to everybody involved in making our ski season so successful. You know, everyone in the resort management, all the people that were up there just for school holidays, everyone that attended. There's a lot of hard work involved in making the ski season run, and it was overrun by visitors to the point where people were being turned away. So, you know, it is a tiring exercise. So congratulations to everybody that was involved in making that so successful. And go Cats.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just congratulations to Elaine and John Harris, residents of Bright. They received a service award in the Lions Club for many decades of service there. Great to see that recognition and their contribution, and great to see it continuing as well.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Congratulations to our newest director on the block, Alan Rees, for sitting in, and also congratulations to Elaine Burridge, who sat in for a period of time and did an excellent job. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor Nicholas. Nothing from me, thank you, but listening intently.
Thank you. I do have congratulations to Amber Gardner, who used to be the CEO of Tourism North East, and then she was the CEO of the Mount Hotham Resort, and she has now been appointed as the inaugural CEO of Alpine Resorts Victoria. And yes, I'm congratulating Amber herself, but also the Alpine Shire and the whole North East, because she's got so much understanding and skills in this area, and I think she'll be a terrific asset in her new role. So I think it's good news for us all. We now move on to declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. And Councillor Prime has a conflict.
Yes, I have one for item 9.3.4, so I will step out of the room for that one.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Next item is public questions. We have 3 written questions on notice. And just as before we move into those, I wanted to make an announcement, I guess, that we've been accepting questions on notice written up until 12 o'clock on council meeting days because of the COVID difficulties of people getting to meetings, etc. But we're now, as of this meeting, we're now reverting back to the question on notice needs to be arrive at the Alpine Shire inbox by 5 p.m. on the Monday before the meeting. But we had a couple of questions that came in late, and we've accepted them today, but we won't in the future. One of those questions relates to item 9.3.4, so I won't be raising it, I won't be talking to it immediately, but we'll bring that up in that item. And the other 2 we will proceed with. So the first one is from the Upper Kiewa Valley Community Association, Inc. And the question is, could the council please explain, for those of us who are not into detailed technology, the difference between spray seal and asphalting? These terms are frequently referred to in the agenda. Is one preferable to the other, and why? Is it just a matter of cost? And I will refer this one to our new Director of Assets, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think I'm on. Asphalt is a combination of sand and rock and bitumen that is mixed together and heated up and then laid by a special machine before being compacted on the surface. And an example of that will be the netball court in Mount Beauty, whereas spray seal is where the bitumen is actually sprayed onto the road, then gravel is put or rock is put down, and then there is more bitumen sprayed onto the top of the rock. And the difference between the two is that the life cycle of asphalt is about 25 years, whereas spray seal is 15.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. The second question is from Kitty Napstein on behalf of the Popunka CFA. And the request is that Council provide support for the proposed upgrade of Popunka CFA fire station. The basis of the request is that Popunka is a growing community and experiences huge influxes of temporary residents during holiday season. There's been locally raised funding in excess of $142,000 and a successful grant application of over $450,000. But the project has come to a halt. So the request from Ms. Napstein is whether Council could help with that. Thank you. And I will ask Mr. Jeremy to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Kitty Napstein, for forwarding that question on behalf of the Popunka CFA. So we've had a discussion. We're not 100% clear on what it is that you're looking for, but we're very happy to provide support where we can to raise the prominence of this issue and to provide you a letter or whatever it is you need in order to get this issue moving. So I suggest that we engage outside the council meeting to establish exactly what it is that's going to be helpful for the Popunka CFA to achieve that.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. That's all of the questions on notice at this point in time. Yes.
Just to complement what the CEO has said, this particular project's gone on for a couple of years now, and community funds have gone into it, not only through local community but also through bushfire recovery, no doubt. And we are always trying to get volunteers into the CFA. It's a difficult role, and the SES. And I think as a morale booster for the CFA going forward, Council should support where they can, where it's appropriate, these type of applications or buildings, whatever's going to be proposed on that site. I've got a reasonable idea, but the longer we wait for these things, the higher the costs go, as we know, even with our own projects. So if we can assist the CFA going forward to achieve something for the volunteers and also for the community, which is why they're there, then I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Janis. And yes, the CFA is a fundamental and very important emergency service, so great to see that they're active in the future. Questions from the floor? Yes. Please state your name and where you're from, as you know.
On now, I think. Thank you for hearing another question from me. This is one that's just come up very recently. Last week in the CBD of Mount Beauty, there were 3 picnic table sets which were removed. The concrete was cut on Wednesday, removed on Thursday, and I've had lots of people asking me why, because they seem to be perfectly serviceable. Today, I noticed that the concrete was being relaid in one of those very spots where it was just taken away on Thursday. It doesn't seem to have had any requests from the community to change those in any way. I can only imagine there must be some reason for doing it, and I hope it can be explained to me.
Thank you, Mary. That sounds like that'll be a question on notice.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, I think we'll have to take that one on notice. I'm looking at Alan Rees, and he's shaking his head, and I'm not aware of the reasoning why that's occurred, so let's take that on notice and get back to you.
Are there any further questions from the floor?
All right, Mayor, just for specifics, CBD, are we referring to that parkland near the swimming pool? Is that? Right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is item 8, the Mayor's report, which is about the annual report, 8.1.1. So the purpose of the item is to present the Council's 2021-22 annual report. It's the first time that the Mayor has been required to present the report, and that's because of the Local Government Act 2020. But it's about, for me, I think the annual report's a really important report on our operations and about how well the Council performs and delivers against the Council plan, which is what we've said we're going to do during the term of Council that we are in. So having the Mayor being part of this presentation, I think, is a terrific thing. There's a couple of things to mention. There's some blank pages in the report that's in the minutes, in the agenda, sorry, because the Victorian Auditor General's Office hasn't finalised their letter of agreement yet. I think I haven't quite got the words right, but that is coming. They have given us an in-principle agreement. They just haven't written the letter. And the report and the performance statement and the financial statements that are part of this item have been approved in principle both by the Council at the last Council meeting and through the Audit Committee and VAGO. So we're well on the way to making this happen. It's just a few little things on the way. There's also a typo that I know Ms Havercroft has sorted to put in the minutes. But before we get there, I just wanted to point out too that we're not going to go to my page, that because we're reporting against the Council plan, this is the very first time that the annual report has reported against the 5 strategic drivers that the current Council plan has. And they're pretty exciting for across the Shire. We're looking at improving things and working towards things for those who live and visit, for a thriving economy, for the bold protection of our future, for the enjoyment and opportunities of our lifestyle, and for strong and informed leadership. And a couple of the highlights are that Alpine Shire has supported community people through grants up to $74,000, which has allowed over $200,000 worth of community projects to go ahead, and at the same sort of level for events. So there's been almost $200,000 put towards events to drive the visitor economy and do what the Alpine Shire does really well. Another thing I wanted to pull out is the Council's Climate Action Plan, which was adopted in September 2021 and is rolling out in a really constructive way that's financially responsible, but also doing as much as we can to reduce our carbon emissions. So a couple of highlights for me. But otherwise, other than that, I'd ask Ms Havercroft to point out the typo and then we'll go to the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So we rather got ahead of ourselves. So in the background, it references that in the annual report itself, it will contain the VAGO certificates. It was wishful thinking. So we've had, as Madam Mayor said, their verbal agreement to them. We await the written signed certificates, hence the blank pages. So in the minutes, it will suggest correctly that they will contain the certificates once we have them back and they're signed. Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that Council, in accordance with section...
Comment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Janus.
Making a comment, Councillor Forsyth. I could perhaps refer it to yourself or the CEO. It's in the report here.
Yep.
I'd just like some clarification, please.
Oh, before it's moved?
Yes.
Yep.
Please. Just in the expenses item, employee costs which were 9.96 million versus a budget of 10.56 million, primarily due to the impact of vacant positions throughout the year, which means we have an underspend on employees, and I suppose it's directed to the CEO. Are there any plans to have our staff members brought up to budget to ease the workload on some of our hard-working staff.
Thank you, Councillor Janus, for that question. So there's a couple of comments in response. One is that you're correct, this year we've underspent on our employee budget by $600,000. If you look back over probably the last 5 or 6 years, we have underspent on our employee budget consistently over that period. So that's something that I've taken on as CEO to have a look into. One of the things I've learned is that when we budget for our payroll, we budget at 100%. So we assume that throughout the year, every single position is filled for every single period that it is budgeted for. And in reality, we find, and we have turnover of staff, some years greater than others, but throughout the year we have vacancies, and therefore through budgeting at 100%, we are always going to be in a position where we are under budget. One of the things I'd like to do to explore with my staff and then with council is to budget more appropriately. So if we look back at the last 5 or 6 years, if we'd budgeted at 95% occupancy for our seats, we would have essentially delivered on budget. So what it translates into me is the ability for us to put a few extra staff on each year while still remaining in the budget that council adopts. So that's one of the things I'd like to do. We're pushing really hard on recruitment as well. So we've had a bit of a drive. We have had some vacancies and some high turnover due to COVID and some COVID-related impacts. And we're pushing really hard to fill those vacant positions because we do realise that every time we have a vacant position, it means we're falling short in delivering on what we've committed to the community.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Quite commendable.
Thank you. So, back to the recommendation.
Moved.
Moved. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Janus, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Councillor Forsyth, sorry. Councillor Janus.
No, my
done?
inquiries have been fulfilled. Thank you.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to say to anybody who's looking on tonight or anybody in the audience out there, this document is the first time that something's been produced like this, as Nicholas has mentioned, and it is really a great snapshot of what's happened. It's very succinct. It's about 5 or 6 pages. It's very easy to read. You don't have to go through reams and reams of data and information just to glean what is actually happening, and it's been very well put together. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? The one to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Keeble is voting affirmative as well. That is passed. Thank you. We move on to section 9, which is presentation of reports by officers, and 9.1 is from our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Jeremy, contracts approved by the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we're presenting you tonight a recommendation that 2 contracts be noted that have been approved by the CEO. So both of them relate to the Myrtleford Memorial Hall, and one of them's electrical work and one of them's building works. And the first thing is, from my perspective, it's fantastic to see this project finally moving forward into a phase when we're starting to deliver. So this has been a challenging project to deliver. This has been a challenging process to engage some contractors, so we really appreciate the work that's gone in by both Apex Electrical and Van Heat Constructions and their ability to be flexible and work with us to get this work underway. So recommendation tonight is that Council notes these 2 contracts and notes that the work is shortly going to get underway in the Myrtleford Memorial Halls.
Moved Councillor Forsyth, seconded Councillor Prime. Councillor Forsyth.
Just clarify one thing, please, Mr Jeremy, and that is because these 2 amounts are underneath your delegation, is it because the total amount of works at the Memorial Hall exceed your delegation amount?
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. It's a very good question and one which we've discussed internally. So historically, we have reported contracts approved by delegation under the CEO where they relate to capital projects, even though they fall under my delegation. So we've continued for consistency with that approach. We're happy to explore with Council whether that's something you'd like us to continue doing or whether that's something you think surplus to requirements.
Councillor Prime.
No, none from me. Thank you.
Any further comments? Questions? No. Put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Keeble has voted affirmative as well. Carried. We move on to 9.2, Director Assets, Mr Alan Rees, and 9.2.1, Alpine Better Places, Harriettville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the update of Council on the results of the community survey and the project delivery timelines for Alpine Better Places Herritville. The background to this project is that it commenced in March 2020, and the focus is on improved streetscapes, including wayfinding signage, paths, tracks, trails, and better connections to the town's assets, as well as improved open space reserves, including upgraded and/or additional facilities and amenities. During the first round of community engagement, the community identified 3 precincts of significance, and they were prioritised by the community as being the Trono Dredge Car Park, the Tavaray and Pioneer Parks, and Herritville Community Hall. Council adopted the concept draft design plans for Herritville following a 28-day community public exhibition process in December 2021, and in February, Council secured funding through the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Fund to undertake the detailed design and construction of the Trono Dredge Car Park. In response to a petition received and acknowledged by Council at the Ordinary Council meeting in June 2022, the community survey was undertaken throughout June and August for a period of 6 weeks. And the purpose of the survey was to establish the level of community support for the project and obtain community feedback that will inform the detailed design. The feedback focused on 4 main areas, those being lighting, amenities, a day shelter, and the overall designs. The survey and utilised the Australian ABS 2021 census data for Herritville, and the methodology involved each resident having a vote. There was an extensive communication program over the 6-week period involving plans being available online, hard copies available at the Herritville Post Office, the Community Hall, the Bright Library, and the Bright offices. Website content was updated and a major projects page was available. There were 4 Facebook posts, radio, newspaper coverage, media releases, and a variable message sign board was also installed in Pioneer Park. And a mail out was done to each household, ratepayer, and resident. The survey results indicated broad community support for the 4 items that were identified, and for record, the ABS census population for Herritville is 488. There were some issues that were identified relating to these 4 items, and I'd like to bring Council's attention to those because they will be incorporated into the detailed design process. For lighting, the community raised some concern around there being a possibility of light pollution in the area, and the detailed design will incorporate in the brief a request for subdued lighting. The amenities were also identified, and a suggestion was made to position them carefully, screen them and size them appropriately for day use, and also to ensure that we deter campers in that area. The day shelter and picnic tables, the request from the community was that they were definitely needed, but they needed to be sized appropriately, and that will be factored into the detailed design. And from an overall design perspective, the main concern was that the community wished to deter overnight campers, and that will be factored into the design brief, particularly around the traffic management and layout of that car park. Another important matter for this project is that the funding agreement for delivery of the project requires Council to meet specific project milestones, and that failure to achieve these milestones places the project and the funding for the project at risk. The project is fully funded through the Blackfire Bushfire Recovery Grant Program. And in conclusion, based on the extensive community engagement and the development of the Alpine Better Places Herritville concept design plans and the broad community support, it is recommended that Council approves the project to proceed with the detailed design and construction, and notes the other recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. I note the length of time that this report has taken to come to council overall, and also note the reason I would say for that is the amount of community consultation that has taken place over that period of time. And I've taken notes here. We've had a mail out to all the residents. Each resident has one vote, rather than, and that's a fair and democratic way that we've been dealing with matters. It's an important project for the Harrietville community going forward, certainly. I also want to note that there has been some correspondence that, we can't, not everybody is necessarily happy with the results going forward, but I think there comes a point where we have to make some form of decision on these matters, and not everybody can have their wishes fulfilled. But I think we have to look at it strategically going forward and with the timeframes that we have listed. So I thank you and the team who have been involved in this, and the community for their commentary along the way to put us in the place where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janis. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, just building on the comments from Councillor Janis, I do thank folk that have reached out with their view to councillors. I'm always interested in people's on-the-ground view. Mr. Rees, a really great summary, I think, on the consultation that's been undertaken. But the survey response, I do sort of look at caution with the supportive plus silent. I would not like to think members of the community saw that result was a reason for me to vote for this. I think it's reasonable to assume that silence is supportive, but maybe not for an entire population. But overwhelmingly, there's good support here, and some real opportunity to make great trailhead facilities for the Feathertop climb, which is becoming increasingly popular. I can't believe the amount of foot traffic compared to only 5 years ago there. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Forsyth.
As is our want tonight, I'm going to build on what Councillor Kelly's just said as well. Traditionally, surveys, if they got a 5 to 7% response, they were doing exceptionally well. This has changed with the advent of electronic things like emails and what have you. So the response rate here is close to 20%, which is pretty good. And if you look at the actual response rates of that 20%, it looks like the community is still supportive. So interesting. I just wonder if we only got 20% there when we did have a full mail out, that people are really just getting engagement fatigue and thinking, oh, well, so what? I'm not going to respond to this anyway. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Prime.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with Councillor Janis on this. There is a point where we need to make a decision. The consultation on this has been enormous, going back to when this all started, March 2020. So it's been a fantastic job by the team, I think. One question from me, Mr. Rees. It says here the funding agreement for delivery of this project requires us to meet project milestones. Is there a rough idea of when we need to have this done by?
Thank you, Councillor Prime. The project is funded through to June 2024. This financial year is a detailed design phase of the project, and then construction will be in the next financial year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Any further comments? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to go over anything that has already been said by other councillors, but just to the fact that Harriettville's getting an upgrade, and it's a fantastic step forward in allowing Harriettville to have the amenities that are going to service the increase in visitors as well as residents in our area. So I think overall the fact that they're able to get something like this is fantastic, and it's following way with the fact that we've had Bright and Pawnpukka do this to date, and with Toowoomba in the process as well, that we need to look at this as a positive note, and with the community consultation, it's probably gone above and beyond what any of them have had to date. So I think, you know, it is a positive view moving forward that this gets to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anything further? Councillor Dennis?
No,
anything?
thank
No?
you.
Okay, we'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? That will be carried. Thank you, everybody. Item 9.2.2, Mount Beauty Airport update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates, or is the purpose of this report is to update Council on the Mount Beauty Airport. Construction, from a perspective of background, has been underway, and the unsealed runway surface is performing well despite the wet winter that we've had. A 25mm asphalt surface treatment can be delivered within the approved budget for this project. And an asphalt surface treatment is recommended as it results in a lower renewal cost to Council and it provides a better user experience for airport users. Asphalt also has a 20% lower carbon footprint over the 25-year life cycle, which aligns with the objectives in Council's Climate Action Plan. In addition to the construction, the Airport Association is being reviewed, and during the airport upgrade, Council, in collaboration with the Mount Beauty Airport Management Association, have identified the opportunity to complete a full review of the association, the airport operating model, and the partnership between the association and Council. Council is not aware of any issues associated with this report. From a financial perspective, the asphalt surface treatment can be delivered within the budget approved by Council. And in conclusion, following the life cycle analysis and the strategic alignment with Council's Climate Action Plan, it's recommended that Council approves the project to proceed with an asphalt surface treatment of the runway and notes the other matters in the recommendation.
Moved, Councillor Prime, seconded, Councillor Hughes. Thank you, Councillor Prime.
Thank you. For anyone who has been following along at home, this project seems to be getting closer and closer to fruition. I'm sure Councillor Keeble could chip in and tell me when all this started. He seems to have a pretty good memory on this topic. And thank you to Mary Pike's question tonight. So we've got a really good understanding of asphalt versus spray seal. And it seems like the best way forward. I think very fortunate we can go ahead and do this for a longer life cycle for all the benefits mentioned. So happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the notes, Mr. Rees, that you've said on here is that it's aligned with Council's Climate Action Plan. My question is, in terms of the difference between asphalt and spray seal, here I am asking you questions, the recycled process of that at the end of its lifespan, is it much of a muchness for both?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. There are two elements that are advantageous for asphalt. One is that the actual material can be milled up and recycled at the end of its life. The other advantage is that we can actually add recycled material to the actual asphalt when we first lay it. So similar to the Great Valley Trail, where we laid an asphalt surface, we'll be using the same product, which has 10% recycled material as part of the asphalt itself.
Any further comments or questions? Well, let's start with Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rees, just a couple of questions or three questions around the review that's proposed. I'd be curious to understand if there's a terms of reference drafted or how that will be circulated to or drafted up. Secondly, who's to perform the review, and thirdly, what's the cost of reviewing the association structure? Thank you.
I had a fourth question to that. It's all on the review, and will it be coming back to Council to see what the MOU actually looks like?
I'm going to jump in if that's okay, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So you may have to repeat some of those questions. Is there a terms of reference? Not yet. So we're at the stage of agreeing with the association that it would be a good idea to have a review and to undertake this opportunity while the construction works to have a bit of a deep dive into how the operations are working, what the service level agreement looks like, how we should operate under best practice from an MOU perspective. The second question was, I apologise.
Who would perform the review, or have we got an independent organisation, or what's the approach?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. So we're currently trying to search for an appropriate mediator to undertake the workshops that we might have to have. So we're anticipating that we've set out at the moment to the association that the first stage would be a meeting and workshops just with the association themselves, and then with interested parties that have an existing interest in the airport, so hangar leaseholders, etc., and that there would be a more broad, probably a survey, although the details haven't been completely defined yet, out to the wider community about the use and how they see the use of the airport into the future. And the third question, I apologise.
The third question was around the cost of the review and how that will be funded.
So at the moment, I'm unable to give you a cost. Once I know, I will share that piece of information. And the fourth question was, will the outcome come back to council? So throughout the stages of the review, information will come back to councillors to keep you involved in how that is working through the system. And it may be that there are councillors who will take part in the work itself. Will it come back to council? I believe that the MOU didn't come to council originally, so I don't see any change in the process in this stage. They wouldn't normally come to council for a decision, but we can discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Further questions or comments? No. Take the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, carried. Thank you. 9.2.3, Popunka Landfill Rehabilitation Cap Construction Stage 2. Thank you, Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the Popunka Landfill Rehabilitation Cap Construction Stage 2. From a background perspective, it's important to note that the design of this cap has been approved by the EPA in June 2022, which is a critical referral authority and the ultimate agency that governs our compliance. There are a couple of issues related to this construction, these construction works. The first relates to a proposal, the methodology will require continuous access to complete the works, which is expected to impact the current transfer station operations. This will likely result in periods of closure to the facility, with residents and businesses being impacted. Considerable planning and communication will occur between the contractor, manager facilities, and the transfer station operations team to mitigate any impacts. An extensive communication with the community will be undertaken to mitigate any inconvenience. From a delivery perspective, an environmentally sustainable design initiative has been undertaken, which involves recycling the subgrade material on site for the reuse as part of the delivery of these works. In the event that the existing material is not suitable, it will be replaced in accordance with the contract scheduled rates. And in the event that that did happen and all of that material needed to be sourced externally, the contract would be subject to a variation of up to $127,400. But we will only know that once works are underway and the material has been tested with EPA standards. From a consultation perspective, we've engaged broadly, particularly with the EPA, their appointed environmental auditor and an external consultant for the design works, as well as DELP and relevant council officers, to ensure that all parties are aware and involved and understand the implications of these works. Following a comprehensive assessment, the tender from Extons Pty Limited is considered to represent the best value option for this project, and it is recommended that council awards the contract to Extons.
Moved by Councillor Forsyth and seconded by Councillor Janice. Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Rees, how long has this particular cap been in place, the one that you're replacing?
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. I would have to take that on notice. I'm not familiar with the exact details.
Okay, I'm just going back a few years and realising that councillors seems to just keep awarding money to put caps on things because the EPA changes its mind about something. So if you could crystal ball it, do you think that within 5 or 6 years a new council will be having the same conversation again? That's I suppose, the nut of the question.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. I think what's important to note is that the current EPA Act requires council to take a position of responsible advising as opposed to being approached by EPA for non-compliance or non-conformance. And so in the spirit of that relationship and that the new Act or the amended Act, the standard to which these caps are designed is called the BEPM standard, which is Best Practice Environmental Management Practices Standard. And the objective of that standard is to ensure that whatever is constructed under these guidelines are compliant. So I'm confident at this point that by the EPA approving the design that's been proposed, that this cap will be compliant with their requirements.
For what period of time?
I can't speculate on that, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Janice.
Thank you. Should the capping material not be the standard? We're expecting a possible variation up to $127,000. Will that come back to council, or will that come forward within the CEO to approve, or how's that going to be handled?
Thank you, Councillor Janice. That one, I understand, would fall within the CEO to approve. Quite happy, though, to have a conversation with council if they would like to see it come back to council.
Yes, because as Councillor Forsyth clearly has stated, that we just seem to be throwing money at our landfills, which I understand for environmental purposes is required. But if goalposts keep changing, then it can become a concern for the ratepayer. But I also understand the environmental impacts that need to be mitigated for our landfills. And in the strategic long term, once this is done, we still have a requirement to look after those sites for 30 years. But in the meantime, we've got better methods of disposing of our waste material.
Thank you, Councillor Janice. Any further? Yes, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Kelly.
Two questions on this one, just going off the back of what Councillor Janice has just said. So we monitor the capping for 30 years, is that what you're saying? Or is it just an ongoing council responsibility for the continued inevitable?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Yes, it's an ongoing responsibility to continue to monitor these old landfill sites.
Okay. And my other question is just for residents out there. We're saying that there's going to be a closure to the transfer station in the time that this is happening. Do we know roughly how long this might be closed for?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. At this stage, it's hard to speculate. It will depend on a range of factors. The rate at which the earthworks can be done, followed by the rate at which the geosynthetic layer can be stitched together. It will also be subject to weather conditions. So it'll be a rather complex set of parameters to manage. We've had extensive conversations with Sarah Buckley, the manager of facilities. She's fully aware of it. The team are as well. And we've already had discussions around how we would manage that and communicate with the community to minimise any inconvenience. But I think we'll only be able to have clarity once we get to that point, and there'll be plenty of notice provided to the community.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a great example of today's generation paying for the last generation's waste, and as an intergenerational problem, some would say this is a small-scale matter compared to climate change. On the topic of climate change, has there been any testing of our landfills around the potential for landfill gas generation in terms of capture of methane once this is securely capped? Do we know? Seeing nodding elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I'll have to take that on notice. I'm not familiar with the exact opportunities. We do monitor the landfill gas emittances as part of our EPA obligations, but I'll have to take that and come back to you.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Councillor Janus?
Just refer back to Councillor Kelly's. The amount of methane, although it does come through, is insufficient in my experience to be economical in capturing and using those gases for electricity production or something, as opposed to some big facility like Whittlesea down there who run big generators off it. But our space is too confined, too small to warrant it.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. I heard the same thing. There's just not enough gas to warrant any generation or even burning it off at this point in time.
So just building on that, our commitments around carbon neutrality, do they take into account our methane emissions? Again, lots of nodding. Okay.
They do, but which is unusual in carbon accounting for local government. So we're a bit ahead in that respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're ready to take that one to the vote. Councillor Forsyth.
This is probably to the CEO. Do our landfills sit on our asset register with a value? Well, I'm hoping they do, but...
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. I understand that they sit on as a liability, so they're treated differently from a building, for example, but so I understand we carry them as a liability to be funded into the future.
Thank you. All done with your questions, everyone? Thank you. We'll take the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And Tony is with us as well. That one is passed. 9.2.4, Asphalt Overlay Program 22-23. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the Asphalt Overlay Program for 2022-23. The Asphalt Overlay 22-23 program will be carried out in Myrtleford, Popunka and Bright this year. Council undertakes asphalt overlay works each year by a process of overlaying existing spray seal with asphalt to prolong the life of selected road segments. I think our question on notice was quite useful.
Very.
And these works typically incorporate court bowls, car parks and intersections. Council is not aware of any issues associated with the award of this contract. However, from a financial and resource implications perspective, it's important to be aware that this program's adopted budget was $150,000 for this financial year. And due to increased market prices, particularly of oil and oil-related products such as bitumen, the scope has been adjusted to maximise the value for the community this year. And it is recommended that the contract value be awarded at slightly higher than the budgeted amount by $5,469. The public tender process...
Thank you, Councillor Janus, and seconded by Councillor Prime. Councillor Janus.
Yep. As this item goes with the next item too, very timely given the state of our roads at the moment and car parks over the wet winter that we've had, and the potholes and the roads services are decreasing, so we need to be on top of it. Drove to Wodonga the other day, and that road is shocking. Shocking. But anyway, it's not our road, and
So you can have
confident that our Alpine Shire roads will be maintained appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Councillor Prime.
No, nothing from me. Happy to support this one. Thank you.
Anyone else? That one to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, carried. 9.2.5, resealing.
Thank you.
23. I should have done these two together. Moved by Councillor Forsyth and seconded by Councillor Hughes. Councillor Forsyth.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Hughes.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions or comments? No. Put this one to the vote. 2, resealing contract for 22-23. All those in favour? Carried. Well, I just realised I should have asked our director if he had any comments on it. Next time. The next item is item 9.2.6, Alpine Shire Youth Strategy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the adoption of the Alpine Youth Strategy and the actions that will follow. From a background perspective, young people are central to a vibrant and healthy community. When given opportunities, young people bring passion, energy and creativity to the whole community. This is the inaugural Alpine Shire Youth Strategy and sets the direction for the next 3 years, guiding Alpine Shire Council and its communities that care Alpine partners' efforts to cultivate resilience, well-being and opportunities for young people and their families within the Alpine Shire region. This draft strategy was put to community public exhibition for 28 days. We received 4 submissions. 2 were supportive. 1 suggested that public transport connectivity be added to this strategy. However, this particular item in terms of public transport connectivity is identified in our one of the strategic objectives in the current council plan and will be addressed through that avenue. And a 4th submission from Victoria Pride Lobby suggested that the strategy needed strengthening to address items such as bullying, confidence in confidentiality, family conflict, gender identity, equity and discrimination and body image. And this feedback has all been addressed under priority 1 of the strategy. From a financial perspective, the actions arising from the youth strategy will be prioritised and will be funded through the normal council budgeting process. An extensive consultation was undertaken with 201 young people aged between the ages of 12 and 25 through a comprehensive communication program. In conclusion, this strategy articulates the needs and priorities of the youth of the Alpine Shire community and identifies clear initiatives to guide council and its partners in the future delivery of programs for youth. And it is recommended that council adopts the strategy and develops an implementation plan to be finalised by the end of December.
Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Terrific process around consultation, and the other thing that really stands out for me on this is the collaboration across really important agencies to make this launch. The one thing I wanted to single out and thank was the Victorian Pride Lobby for their response to our consultation and their submission. Often is the case in life, next to one of your great strengths is one of your great weaknesses, and one of your great strengths in a small community is that everyone knows everyone and is very supportive of each other, but that can also bring a real problem for folk who want to see high levels of confidentiality or in dealing with some issues that we all have in life. So I really appreciate them reaching out, and great to see their feedback accommodated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. As it states, the youth are a really important part of our Alpine Shire and forming what the future looks like. And one of the congratulations that we didn't do at the start was the Youth Awards that were held just recently as well, really showcasing what it is our youth have to offer, and that was a very, very small portion of what is representative throughout the Alpine Shire. So having a strategy documented and collaborating with other agencies, I think, is a really strong position moving forward. I do have a question, just because the importance of the youth strategy and what it represents. What level of staff do we have in this space compared to what we have had in the future moving forward on this strategy, please?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. We have just recently appointed 2 youth workers, and they've been funded through bushfire recovery funding. So we're in a very fortunate position to be able to resource this really well. And it's a great opportunity to make some progress in this space.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? Take this recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Now predictably. Okay. Then we move on to item 9.2.7, Bushfire Recovery Grant Funding. Mr. Rees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report relates to the reallocation of existing and the allocation of new bushfire recovery funding. From a background perspective, there are 2 major funding streams. The first is the State Government's Council Support Fund. And through this fund, Council has received 3 tranches of funding, totaling a value of $2.3 million. This report is recommending the reallocation of $330,000 of this to enable projects to be progressed that are ready to do so. In particular, $320,000 be reallocated to the Myrtleford Memorial Hall project, and $10,000 to enable the 0.2 FTE resource to be appointed and work on evacuation and emergency plans for council buildings. In addition, $272,000 of financial assistance was also received by Council in September under the same fund, and these funds will be utilised to extend bushfire recovery resources through to 30th of June 2023, which aligns with the completion date for all the projects and activities funded under the Council Support Fund. There is also a federal funding stream, and Council has been awarded $565,000 of funding through the stream, and it relates to a range of events, including community events, mobility lift for disabled access, resilience activities, resources to continue to develop Council's climate resilience activities, and so forth. These grant agreements will require all activities to be completed and funded, and are fully funded and expended by the 30th of June 2023. The recommended allocation of funding has been established with input from the Alpine Community Recovery Committee and engagement with council officers representing different areas of council's activities. In conclusion, the recommended allocation of funding will allow council, the Alpine Community Recovery Committee, and the Alpine Resilience Partnership to continue to support our communities in their ongoing recovery from the 2019-2020 bushfires and to strengthen community capability and resilience. Recommended that Council notes the recommendations in the report for the reallocation and allocation of these funds.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's great that we can actually reallocate these funds to things that we've got, what we like to call shovel ready or whatever. And it's very rare that we actually get funds that aren't stipulated for a particular purpose. So when we look at our current pipeline and we find a worthy project and we've got spare funds, then we'll throw it at it. And I think it's very good to do that. I do have one question regarding the third tranche, the 575, and that is regarding the Bright Public Wi-Fi project. $20,000 being allocated to that. Is this to boost or to facilitate a better Wi-Fi system that's already been put into place by the local traders, which I understand is still working? And if it's not, is that $20,000 going to be then a yearly thing that we are going to be spending on supplying the Wi-Fi for visitors?
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. So this relates to a project that's being driven by the Bright Chamber of Commerce. So they've been trialling the implementation of some Wi-Fi in the CBD of Bright. The funds here, the $20,000, are for the purchase of infrastructure, so hardware, so it's not an ongoing cost. The objective, as I understand it, is to install the infrastructure in Council's Visitor Information Centre and to have a Wi-Fi network that is broadcast from those buildings. The key objective is to take the load off the Apex Hill Tower and also to provide some coverage down into Howitt Park, which has very poor coverage because it's shielded from the tower.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to call out that it's great to see the contribution of the Community Recovery Committee being prioritised in terms of allocation of grant funds for activities there. I think that's really important.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's on page 31 of the report in the table. Climate resilience activities, $120,000. So I suppose with my previous reading, I just want confirmation that this is monies that is allocated to preparing a plan to enhance our zero emissions concept to 2023, the end of 2023, so that we've got a plan of action going forward. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. If I could take this one. So Council has a climate action plan which is focused on Council's internal activities with a target of net zero by the 30th of June next year. We're starting on the journey of a community climate action plan. And this is the first step, which is developing the roadmap to understand how we're going to move in this journey of essentially educating and bringing the community on the journey with us to reduce the community's carbon footprint. So that's the first part of this funded activity. The second part of it is some specific initiatives to essentially what we've seen is an opportunity to develop a prospectus for Council's land and Council's assets that we could then put out to the community to allow them to bid or to put in expressions of interest to install some facilities on council land. So there's two parts to that funded proposal.
Thank you. And the second, and it's the next item down, reflect reconciliation action plan, and the description being delivery of actions identified in the draft reflect RAP and a fund of $20,000. As a councillor, I haven't seen that plan or a draft of the plan as well. So can I just get a little bit more explanation around that funding, please?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. So the draft reconciliation action plan has been put together by a working group that's had representatives from the community and I understand also representatives from the councillors here. So that was put together as a collaborative process. The document has been through Reconciliation Victoria, who's the peak body in Victoria, and they've come back with some feedback. The key feedback is that we had loaded up a single resource with a lot of the actions. Then they wanted us to effectively better distribute those actions across all council teams and all council officers rather than having it concentrated in a single resource. So we've been working through with the council officers and the council teams to understand how we can achieve that. So our teams are very busy and they have limited capacity to take on extra work, so we have to be very careful when we sign up to take on additional activities that they will deliver. So we've worked through that process. We're getting very closer to being able to provide that revised draft back through the working group and then back to Reconciliation Victoria. And we anticipate at this stage that we'll be able to bring the draft to council meeting in December for council to sign off. So where I'm leading with this is there's a number of actions in that Reconciliation Action Plan in the draft at the moment that will require some funding to be able to deliver. An example would be some limited signage to provide better recognition of traditional owners around the Shire. So this gets the journey started. So it's not the whole funding, but it allows us through the next 6 months into the next half or the second half of the financial year to be able to start delivering on some of these actions. Because one of the things we do when we sign off on the plan as it's been through Reconciliation Victoria is we commit to a time frame. And the time frame is around 12 to 18 months from signing the RAP for us to make meaningful progress on some of the actions in that plan. So we don't want to be seen to be effectively or council endorsing a RAP and then us sitting on our hands for 6 months while we secure funding to deliver it.
Will this plan be available to the public once it's been ratified by council?
Thank you, Councillor Janice. Yes, this will be come to a public council meeting and it'll be published on our website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? No. Take the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And Tony's with us. Sometimes I forget to say. That's carried, thank you. The next item is 9.2.8, Tourism North East Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement for the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Council and Tourism North East for the period 1 July 2023 to 30 June 2026. As background, Tourism North East is one of the 11 regional tourism boards established by the state government. And Tourism North East's core function is to drive visitation and grow tourism product on behalf of the 7 councils and the 3 Victorian snow resorts. A Memorandum of Understanding agreement dated 1 July 2020 to 30 June 2023 exists, and the purpose of this report is to be prepared for the next 3 years well in advance. Each of the partners in Tourism North East commits an equal share to recurring annual funding to underwrite the core function of Tourism North East. The signing of the memorandum is a continuation of the commitment of all stakeholders. However, there is still some uncertainty at this stage whether there will be any impact on this arrangement as a result of the recent Alpine Resorts reform and amalgamation of the separate snow resort management boards into one entity, being Alpine Resorts Victoria. From a governance perspective, Tourism North East has an annual review process where their performance is evaluated as from a board perspective, the strategic direction of the organisation, as well as the performance of the Chief Executive Officer and its staff. And also the Board of Directors is constituted of the Chief Executive Officers from all the nominated councils that are members of Tourism North East. From a financial and resource perspective, this memorandum will commit council to 3 years of core funding of $40,000 per annum with CPI increases, and this cost will be incorporated into council's annual budgeting process. Expenditure for discretionary activities including destination marketing and promotion and the management and hosting of the 5 destination websites for Alpine Shire will be managed through council's annual budgeting process. In conclusion, it's recommended that this commitment is continued to Tourism North East through a Memorandum of Understanding from 1 July 2023 to 30 June 2026. And that the recommendations to endorse the memorandum and authorising the Chief Executive Officer to sign the memorandum when the time passes, that will commit council to $40,000 per year for the next 3 years.
Councillor Forsyth has moved. Councillor Kelly has seconded. Councillor Forsyth.
Tourism North East has a very strong history of success, basically. And I think it's, over the past few years of its history, some councils have decided not to be in it, but then they've always come back online anyway. And I think Alpine Shire has always been one of the councils that have been part of it. I just think that it makes perfect sense. We are a very strong tourist destination. We can piggyback onto Tourism North East because anybody who comes to North East, they automatically think of Bright and surrounds. So I believe that, yeah, it's good. We should be doing it.
Councillor Kelly.
Nothing further to add, Mayor.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Janice.
Seeing as Ms Gardner is former CEO of Tourism North East and now the ARB, so we're unsure whether our fees might go up or down. So we've got 3, now we've got 1. Are they going to pay at one rate or are they going to combine it to 3?
Thank you, Councillor Janice. So that is unknown at this point, but I suggest that's a decision to be discussed between the Board of T&E and the Board of the Alpine Resorts.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to get a discount out of them. Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Take one to the vote. All those in favour? Be carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rees. You're done for the night, I think. Congratulations on your first, I was going to call it a board meeting, council meeting. Ms Havercroft is on the podium next. Item 9.3.1, Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes and recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report is to present the minutes and the recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee.
Happy to move. Nothing to add.
Okay. Take the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? Beautiful. 9.3.2, Toowoomba Caravan Park lease.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend the granting of a 21-year lease for the Toowoomba Caravan Park, permitting an operator to prepare the caravan park for reopening, so to prepare mobilisation. The Toowoomba Caravan Park is an important and popular tourist asset, and awarding of a long-term lease represents a significant opportunity for Council to achieve long-term capital improvements and the development of a high-quality tourist destination. Council is nearing completion of a project to deliver significant infrastructure upgrades in the park, funded by the State Government through the Crisis Committee of Cabinet Infrastructure Stimulus Fund. Expressions of interest for the long-term lease for the park were advertised on the 8th of June in the Herald Sun, Alpine Observer, Border Mail and via tenders.net. The EOI documents were downloaded 19 times and we received 2 conforming proposals. Following the assessment of the submissions, it was determined that the proposal from Belgravia Pro best met the selection criteria. The proposal from Belgravia Pro includes substantial capital investment into the park during the first 5 years of the lease. During the EOI process, the documentation that was shared with all indicated the lease would be subject to a rent review after year 3. Rent in years 1 to 3 is reduced to facilitate the capital investment in the park, whilst Belgravia Pro, build the business and its customer base. Public notice was given in September 2022 in the Alpine Observer and in the Border Mail of the Council's website, indicating Council's intention to award a lease for the operation and development of a Council-managed Crown land known as Toowoomba Caravan Park. The recommendation this evening is that, subject to ministerial approval, Council enters into a lease with Belgravia Pro for the operation and development of Toowoomba Caravan Park and delegates authority to the Chief Executive or his nominated representative to sign the lease.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Ms Havercroft, for that. Just one or couple of questions, sorry. The proposal provides for significant investment in the park within the first 5 years. That will be at Belgravia's discretion, or how does that look?
Thank you, Councillor Prime. So they must meet the conditions of their tender proposal and they will form part of the lease. And at this stage, the first 5 years of capital investment is just over $1 million.
And then I don't think it was mentioned here, opening date still on track, weather dependent?
So we are hoping, as the recommendation suggests, that the commencement of the lease would be on the 17th of October. From that point forward, it's up to Belgravia Pro, if the recommendation is approved, to work out their mobilisation times. But at this point, through the negotiations that have already been undertaken, there's no indication that they are extremely keen to open by Christmas if this all goes to plan.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Janus?
Just a comment. I'd like to I think it's important that we acknowledge the state government for the COVID stimulus in this project, $2.1 million. If they hadn't come to the party, then we would have lost this asset to the Kiowa Valley, and a lot of businesses and people would have missed out on this opportunity. So I think it's important that we recognise the state government in this instance.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. I agree. Councillor Hughes.
Excuse my ignorance with this question, but we're Committee of Management as appointed by Dwell. How long is that for? Is that just an ongoing representation as Committee of Management, or is it a certain time frame, and is there a chance at all that they can appoint a different Committee of Management? It's something I've never asked, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. The details of that I may have to take on notice, but we are very recently the Committee of Management on that site, and they don't come with a time limit. There's a review process dependent on whether a party requests it, but it hasn't happened in the past.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned, Ms Havercroft, that within the first 5 years, Belgravia Pro, in the notes here it says that it's nearly $2 million, not one, of development works. Now, if that's in the first 5 years, they've got a 21-year lease, they've got 16 years to run those developments down. I'm assuming that's infrastructure that the development works refers to.
Mr Forsyth, and thank you for picking up my mistake. It is 1.9, not 1.09, which is $1 million. It is infrastructure of many varieties, so they are intending to place additional cabins on the site. There's amenity blocks, there's a playground was listed, there's a detailed list of investment proposals that they have for those first 5 years, and they are to capitally improve the site significantly for their tenants, their patrons.
And at the end of 21 years, do we actually own those?
So at the moment, the lease continues to be negotiated, but my understanding is that the assets revert to council.
Which will probably be at the end of their practical life anyway after 21 years. So, but still, we get to keep them. That's what we're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further clarification, questions, comments? No. Take that one to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous again. Fantastic. Okay, 9.3.2, planning application, and big number, 1072 Morses Creek Road, Wandillagong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This planning application involves the construction of a dwelling, a host farm, agricultural outbuildings, and some water tanks. So to demonstrate the need for a dwelling on this site, the applicant has submitted a farm plan. That is because it is a farm, it's in the farming zone, and the site is less than 40 hectares, so there's no as-of right for a dwelling. The farm plan is a proposal for 2,361 olive trees to produce olive oil. I won't read out all the specific details of the site itself, but the site has a total area of 8.4 hectares, so significantly short of the 40 hectares, is in a regular rectangular shape, slopes down towards Morses Creek. The site contains an agricultural outbuilding sited near the southeast corner that exists already on the site and can be seen in the photographs in the report. During the public notification, we received 3 objections, and these can be summarised into 7 matters. Broadly, just the top sentence, it does not protect the land from inappropriate non-rural associated development, and that's a reference to the host farm. The proposal will not enhance agricultural production. It's got a negative additional traffic impacts. There's dust hazards, negative noise impacts, and negative environmental impacts. And lastly, there's a negative impact on the quality life and serenity. The assessing officer's response to those matters is broadly that they can be covered by different policies within our planning scheme. But for the detail, the relevant policy for number 1 encourages the development of host farms and tourism developments in general, and conditions would be included to ensure that all proposed agricultural activities are fully implemented prior to the commencement of any buildings and works for the host farm. The farm plan was peer-reviewed by the Council's expert consultant and has identified the proposed agricultural activities as viable for this piece of land. The traffic impacts were considered by the Council's engineering team, and at this stage the proposal is not considered to result in any substantial increase in the traffic in the area. With regards to the dust hazard, the separate legislation that sits outside the Planning and Environment Act that regulates the environment, that is the Environmental Protection Authority that will deal with any dust that accrues from the land. Noise impacts, similarly, are dealt with by legislation that sits out the Planning and Environment Act. And the negative environmental impacts on the adjoining property and the creek have been considered by Goulburn Murray Water and the Council's Environmental Health Team, and conditional consent was provided by both. The subject land is zoned for farming where agricultural activities are encouraged and permitted as of right, where heavy machinery and equipment may operate. So that will potentially have an impact on the neighbours from a serenity and life perspective. The recommendation to Council this evening is that a notice of decision to grant planning permission be issued for the use of works and buildings for a dwelling, host farm, agricultural outbuilding and water tanks in accordance with the conditions outlined in the appendix to the report.
Moved by Councillor Janus, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Councillor Janus.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, this is one of the few applications that have come before Council over the number of years where a site, a farming site, less than 40 hectares, has actually had a business plan attached to it that is relatively, well, seen to be viable. And the buildings on it, according to the plans, as I've seen them, seem to be fit nicely into the environment without being an eyesore. There is machinery shed there. There will be noise because it's an olive farm, and at certain times of the year there'll be certain activities take place in relation to that. Machinery shed down at the front of the block, and also being able to host other people there, and no doubt they'll be paying customers, adds to the ambience of that farm, and I think it works in well with our area. But for me, the fact that a business plan has been assessed and approved is an important factor in relation to farms under less than 40 hectares. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Janus said, it's an application for a farming zone that's going to be farmed. So it's being used for its intended purpose, which is, especially in Wandie, has had some discussion over the last couple of years, let's just say. Can you please confirm this is outside of the heritage part of Wandie, is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. If you wouldn't mind me, I'll just refer to my notes to find out.
I see it noted on there, but I just wanted
it doesn't form part of the recommendation, so it isn't an overlay that sits within this property.
That's all? Yes. Yep. Any further comments or questions?
I've driven past this site and the buildings in that vicinity don't appear to have any heritage value to them. They're just normal buildings with corrugated iron and a lot of disused farm machinery in the area. So this would only enhance the area.
Thank you. I do have a question, and that's around timing of the establishing the olive trees and building the house. Is there any requirement that the farm's viable before the property's habitable, or is it just once the permit's approved, then they can go for it?
The planning conditions, if the matter is approved this evening, stipulate that the host farm can't commence any construction, but that the dwelling can, because it was seen as part of the farm plan that the dwelling is needed on site for the getting the agricultural land up and running.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. I'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? And Tony's with us too, so that's unanimous. Thank you. The next item is item 9.3.4, and Councillor Prime is leaving the room at 6:39. Thank you. So at the beginning of this item, I wanted to raise the questions that I mentioned earlier that were sent in by Priscilla Rogers. Priscilla attended a planning forum and requested at that the whole range of the area where it was possible to put this Optus facility was shared with Council, and she asked whether that had happened, and the answer's yes. And she was also curious about the diagrams that are in the proposal and whether what she was looking at, which indicated that the tower was likely to be starting a couple of metres higher than the current ground level, was accurate or not. And I will ask Ms Havercroft to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in the conditions that are attached to this application, should it be approved, there is a note that building consent is required after the planning permission. At that point, there will be detailed plans about the construction of the site itself. And in addition, I believe it's figure 3 sets out that the antenna itself is 12 metres, but its total height will be 15 metres, which would indicate that they are intending to build to ground level, flat level, so that there's no dip, doesn't gather water. But the details will come through the endorsed plans and then through the platform planning, building control.
Thank you. And the final question, although we usually only do two, I'm going to put this one forward anyway. Is the planning team aware of any signed agreements between the current and or future landowners and Optus which supports the application? Thank you.
At the current time, we're not aware that the current owners or the prospective owners have any agreement with Optus.
Thank you, Ms Havercroft. And now I will ask you to talk to the...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first thing I would like to draw everyone's attention to is the applicant's name. They have asked us to qualify this. So in the report, it says it's SAQ Consulting Property Limited. They are acting on behalf of Optus Telecoms Property Limited. And so the applicant is actually Optus, who would own the facility. But to the application itself, the proposal this evening is that a 15-metre high galvanised steel monopole with 2 parabolic antennas is sited at the top of that pole. It's set back to include 296 metres from the Mulligong Road lot boundary, 76 metres from the eastern lot boundary and 5 metres from the northern lot boundary. It will be a fenced compound 6 by 6 metres and will have an associated site distribution board within the above mentioned compound area, and it will use the existing vehicle access that goes to that site. The subject land and the surrounds within the planning report reference a much larger site. So the subject of this planning application is the 6 by 6 metre enclosure and the antenna itself. But that sits within a 38 hectare site, which comes in 2 lots. It's of a regular shape and it's in undulating land. During the public notification period, there were 2 objections received, and they can be summarised in 2 main points. 1, there's a lack of adequate screening, and 2, that concerns with the proposed location and siting. This matter was additionally raised during a planning forum which took place on the 30th of August of this year, of which councillors were in attendance, and subsequently, and as Madam Mayor referenced earlier, an output from SAQ Consulting has been shared with councillors around the different sites that were considered, trying to address some of the concerns in concern number 2. This report sorry, I get my tongue tied. The report was prepared prior to that information from SAQ being delivered, but the planning team have confirmed that the outcome of that wouldn't have changed the nature of the report or the recommendation that's contained within it. So the screening and visual impact is proposed that they place the antenna near an existing tree. There are also conditions placed on the planning application that subsequent at minimum height 2 metre trees need to be planted near it or around it to continue that screening, because trees have a tendency to fall down at times, to protect that site. And to talk to the siting, it was important that they need a clear line of sight to the proposed Cancuna Tower. And whilst they've worked through many different sites, this is the site that they would like the planning application to be assessed on. So the planning application before you is for that 6 metre by 6 metre site that sits within the lot, as described. The recommendation for you this evening is that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for the use in buildings and works for a telecommunications facility in accordance with the conditions set out in the annex, for the following reasons. It's in a farming zone, it meets the planning policy framework and the particular provisions contained within the telecommunications facility 52.19 and the decision guidelines at clauses 6501.
Councillor Janice, are you moving that, or do you want to make a point?
I shall move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Janice.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have visited the site on the date with Councillor Forsyth and the Mayor. No. Most strategic, there are a number of issues here that Council need to consider at the moment. It's come to our attention that there is no current lease arrangement with the applicant, as I understand, and that there is a new owner of that parcel of land. And so we're not subject to any conversation that those people may or may not have had with the proponent here. So, putting all that aside, the need for this tower is it's a strategic tower for the safety of the community through the Cancuna area, which, in my view, has suffered badly over many fire seasons, etc., through lack of communication. So I'm looking at it from this view, is that the safety importance of the residents is paramount, and having good communication channels in time of some serious incident going forward. Also, having viewed the site, it is possible within a few years to have appropriately planted trees that would block the view of a tower there. There are other buildings there that may or may not remain, a big hay shed there, and the dishes, which I think are about 1 metre or 1.2 metres in diameter, will certainly be visible, but they could be screened out with appropriate screening plants in a few years' time going forward. And then no doubt there will be colour paint, appropriate paint applied to the pole and other attachments to that. So I fully understand the proponents, not the proponents, so the objectors don't want to look at a tower, but also when I look around the whole of area, there's some high-powered transmission lines to the rear of the property that you have to look at. You know, there's nothing to stop a farmer putting a windmill there either, which is going to have the same effect. So, to me, the important issue here is the safety of the people in Cancuna and surrounds who will rely on that tower. The only other site was a DELP tower, communications tower. Am I correct in reading that? At Mount
On the fire.
On the fire tower at Mount Paul Punker, and DELP.
Or an independent one up there.
Yeah, or an independent, which DELP wouldn't come to the party with, and for whatever reason, I don't know, but clearly they didn't want it there. So this is probably the next best option, being line of sight, and all those technical issues that are involved in that. So I can't talk too much more to that. I'm just trying to unpack certain things and stick to the strategic thing. Perhaps going forward, the negotiations between the Optus and the landowners may not come to fruition, and that's a whole different story. But I have to deal with what is in front of me tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Forsyth.
I reserve my right until some other council. Please.
You can. Other councillors then? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I don't have much further to add. I think, you know, accepting the council officer's recommendation tonight still means there are some hurdles to achieving the overarching goal here. For me, there is an overarching goal of mobile coverage, mobile network coverage, and telecommunications to Cancuna, which is a significant black spot and has quite the population these days. So that safety aspect for me is incredibly important.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes?
As Councillor Janus has said, we're making a decision based on what's put in front of us and emotions taken out of it. If we are to approve the recommendation of granting the permit for this, as noted, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come to fruition, because there's a lot of other things that need to happen to get that one over the line for Optus. But question is, if it is approved tonight and the landowner does come to some form of agreement and it's in a different location on that site, what's the process then?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. My understanding of the situation is if the new owner comes to an agreement with Optus about whether they would like it and it's not in its current location, it would come through as an amended planning application.
Does that then go through advertising? Yeah, thank you for the ability to object and go through this whole thing again.
That really depends on how far removed from its current location it is. So the public notification on an amended application hinges around whether it's a material difference in where it would be, and that's largely at the planner's discretion. There is obviously a negotiation and a conversation to be had about whether that would need to go back onto public exhibition. and if there was objections, to come to council for a decision.
And if the landowner doesn't agree to this, what does that mean for this application in its entirety moving forward?
So the planning, thank you, Councillor Hughes. The planning application stands alone and distinct from any lease or conversations that are taking place or have taken place between the owner of that land and any subsequent owner of that land and Optus. We won't be involved in those at all. It's the meeting of the conditions that sit within this planning application if it's approved. If the tower doesn't happen, the permit conditions set out that if it doesn't happen within a certain time frame, the planning application would lapse. It would need to be either extended before that period, or it's a new application if they come to an agreement down the line.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Forsyth?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I can build on what Councillor Janus said, but I think he said it quite succinctly, and so did Councillor Kelly. I just believe that this is one of these situations where it is a difficult decision, but I think council, what's being asked is that council make an indication or give an indication as to what is best for the community, and that's what I believe is being voted on here tonight. And I'd just like to remind any detractors of that of the phone tower that's on Backpool-Punker Road. There are a lot of objectors to that, but now you drive past it and you don't even know it's there. There you go. It came through council some years ago now. A lot of objections to that, didn't want it in their front yard, backyard, whatever, but you don't see it anymore. So it's one of those things. It's very... Yeah, all right, I've got them here. One of those things. It's what is immediately going to happen to you, and what, as opposed to looking at long term. And I think this is a really long term vision that we should be looking at with this one.
Okay, Councillor Keeble, did you want to contribute?
Hi, Mayor Nicholas, can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
I've been listening intently, and I don't have any further questions. It is a difficult one. You know, in my head, I wonder how hard has Optus gone with Dwell and the towers over there. Yeah, I'll go to the vote. All yours.
Thank you. Councillor Janus, would you like a right of reply? You happy? Okay, we're ready to take it to the vote then. All those in favour of the recommendation tonight? Yep. That's Councillor Keeble's with us too, just for those who are watching and in the gallery. Thank you. So that is passed, and Councillor Prime can return to the room. I wonder if they'll tell her. Yep. Okay. Teresa's getting. Oh no! Didn't you have that? Councillor Prime returned at 6:56. And we move on to item 10, informal meetings of councillors. Thank you. Any discussion or comments on these? Corrections? No? We'll put it to vote. All those in favour of the recommendation we receive? Thank you. That was, yes, perfect. Thank you. It's carried. Number 11, presentation of reports by delegates. I'll start from my left. Councillor Forsyth.
Not currently, but definitely next council meeting.
Yeah, I bet. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes. Nothing from me. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janus.
Yeah. I represented council at the MAV rules meeting a couple of weeks ago now, I suppose it was, to just endorse what council have asked me to vote for in relation to those rules. And then there was the Alpine Resilience Partnership meeting that I chair, and there were some actions to be taken out of that, and I'll report back up to the MEPC, as is my role as chair, and I was voted in to be chair for another period of time.
Thank you, Sir Janice. Councillor Prime.
One from me.
We're moving on to general business. Oh no, I did ask Councillor Kelly, I forgot. General business, I'm going to start from my left again too. No, nothing from Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Kelly?
Just one item, Mayor, and thank you for Councillor Forsyth reminding me. Going back to 931, just wanted to thank Mr Gerard Moore for agreeing to continue to chair as our Audit and Risk Committee chair. It's a credit to Mr Moore in that he runs a great committee there, and also him being very transparent that it's his intention to hand over the chairingship to another committee member in 12 months' time. So great for continuity and for succession planning. So thank you, Mr Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Hughes?
Congratulations to the team on our first hybrid meeting. Woohoo! I'm assuming Councillor Kibble has been able to hear us because I've been seeing him nod away and different bits and pieces. My question is, though, obviously because it's recorded and live streamed and put up on the YouTube page for reference, is Councillor Kibble recorded in terms of his responses to all of the motions tonight? Do we know? Yes, yep. He is. Okay, thank you.
That's all?
Yep.
Councillor Janice? Councillor Prime? I was going to pick up Councillor Hughes' reminder about the Youth Awards and just say how terrific the event was and how wonderful it was to see our incredible young people up there on the stage accepting their awards and those who were nominated, and just put a bit of a shout out to people to nominate for next year, because without the youngsters being nominated, then we don't get to showcase them. So we'll do some work on getting nominations closer to the time next year, but it was really lovely to see those young people up there being so proud and having their achievements and commitment acknowledged. Has previously been given, and there are none. 14, reception and reading of petitions, and we do have a petition which I will ask Mr Jeremy to talk to.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, we did receive a petition. The petition was received too late for us to capture it in the agenda for the meeting today. It was received yesterday afternoon. So this petition was from the Victorian Pride Lobby, and it's got 77 signatures, and it's requesting Council to show its support to fly the rainbow flag on the 17th of May to mark the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersex Discrimination and Transphobia. So that's the Ida Hobbit Day. The petition itself doesn't quite meet the requirements of our governance rules. So our governance rules state that an electronic or an online petition must contain the name and the email address of each petitioner or signatory, which the petition doesn't. However, recommendation tonight to Council is that Council does accept this petition, and we table a report at the next Council meeting. So we've put a recommendation up on the screen. I would like to change it though. So there's 77 signatures. It's unclear which are residents and which are not residents. There are postcodes, so I think to be clear we should probably just say 77 signatories rather than saying whether they're residents or non-residents and where they're from. But otherwise the recommendation is as on the screen. So Council notes and receives the petition from the Victorian Pride Lobby, signed by 77 signatories, and requesting Council to show its support to fly the rainbow flag on the 17th of May to mark the Ida Hobbit Day.
Moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Prime. Go ahead.
Just wanted to make note that this isn't the first time discussions on this matter has actually come before us. So being able to table the petition and I suppose form a response at the next council meeting, I think it's a good thing.
Prime?
Yes,
Just the one question, I'm not sure who it's for. I've been asked previously how to fill in a petition. Is this something that's easily accessible on the website? I haven't actually checked myself, or do you have to go digging for it?
Thank you, Councillor Prime. So if you're on Council's website and you type governance rules, it'll bring up the governance rooms, and then section G4 has a section on petitions.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Do we have a template available for people who might like to prepare a petition?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We don't have a template, so we receive a petition in any format which meets the requirements of the governance rules.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried. Thank you. Item 15 is documents for sealing.
A second.
Moved by Councillor Forsyth and seconded by Councillor Hughes. You want to talk to them, Councillor Forsyth? No. We'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. And I'm just racing to the bottom here because now I declare the meeting is closed as there is no further business at 7:04 p.m.